Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this out of the box review, as it were. Of course, here we have our box. Inside the box we have an envelope, a sort of bubbly envelope. Inside the bubbly envelope we have a box, and there's a bit of a pattern emerging here. Inside this, is there another envelope? Who knows now. Inside this is obviously the bit that we've all come to see, and as you can see, this one says Steeldive. Ooh, the excitement. I've got to say, just before I open this, these boxes, absolutely great. Absolutely great. They're like a kind of like a budget Pelly case. You know, they're hard plastic with snap lugs and foam padding inside. They're really, really good. Brilliant things. I've had a couple of watches in these. Never had a Steeldive as yet. So, inside this, of course, is some foam padding. Very nice. Very foamy. And inside this is bubble wrap, plastic bag, watch, foam padding in between the strap. I like that. It's a nice little touch. Bit of wrapping, and the main event, the fellow itself, if I can find the end that unwraps. It's here somewhere. I usually there we go. I'm going to say I usually do this bit off camera because it can be a bit of a nuisance. And there we have the Willard Homage, the famous Seiko Willard Homage. So I will just scoot in, and there you can see it. The seconds hand is already sweeping away, as you can see. And initial impressions are very, very good. I think this looks really quite lovely. So I'm going to go ahead, get all the wrapping off, and we'll scoot in and have a proper look. The bracelet, at a quick glance, looks really, really good. I did go for the bracelet version rather than the strap version, tropical strap version. While I think this watch looks great on a tropical strap, I'm not a rubber strap fan. I'm really not. My preference is for stainless bracelets, as per this one here. Not a huge fan of tropical straps. Not a huge fan of rubber straps in general. I find them a little bit hot and sweaty and not particularly pleasant. Although I can see the practical aspect of them. So we'll see. I'll see how I like this one on the bracelet. I can always potentially look at other strap options, including leather, because why not, you know. I know a lot of people go, ooh, a dive watch on leather, but, you know, got a hang tag with a Steeldive logo, a very Rolexy kind of vibe going on there. And the case looks nice, a brushed finish to the back, polished on the sides. We've got, I think that's a signed crown underneath this little blue. No, it's not a signed crown. Oh, that's interesting. I thought it was. Maybe it's only a signed crown on the one with the dial logo. Interesting, but neither here nor there. And strangely and interestingly enough, I never even noticed previously, but we don't have the signed case back on the sterile dial version either, which surprises me. Now, that wouldn't have bothered me in the least one way or the other, but I fully expected the Steeldive logo on the case back, so I'm a little surprised at that, but there we go. Very nice ceramic bezel. And oh, I like that. That's got a nice kind of tight, clicky action to it. I like that. That's yeah, that's good. We like that. And then, of course, this will be a screw-down crown, which indeed it is. Hacking because it's an NH35 movement, and hand winding. So that I can't be accused of favouritism, here are the white gloves. You know, just based on the last video and everything, I don't want to have people saying, oh yeah, I see you put the white gloves on for the posh one, but not this one. Well, so there you go, white gloves for both. So whether it's a posh expensive one, or whether it's a very affordable and very, very nice, I've got to say so far, homage. There you go, white gloves. I've just resized the bracelet for me, and really I've just popped the gloves on just to avoid sticking dirty, greasy finger marks all over it. There are some marks on the case back. Now, I don't know how visible that's going to come across just now. You see some scratches on the case back there. It's a highly polished mirror finish case back. Those were already there. That had a protective sticker on it, and it did have the foam padding, as you saw. So this, it had the protective sticker on the back, it was wrapped in plastic, it was wrapped in the foam, and then we had the foam in between the bracelet and here. So how and at which point that's happened, I don't know, but that was there after unwrapping. It's not something that bothers me. If I'd just paid brand new Prospex Willard money, for example, that would bother me. That would upset me greatly. On an £8 Homage, I'm really not that bothered. I mean, you don't buy a watch like this to keep pristine and as a showpiece. This is going to be a daily wear, and it's going to be fun. Now, I love Homage watches. Yes, I like nice watches. Who doesn't like nice watches? And although I've got a couple of nice watches, I love Homage watches because they are a means of wearing something that you like for an affordable price without, you know, being silly and you know, having to scrimp and save to buy something ridiculously expensive just for the sake of saying that you've got something ridiculously expensive. So as you can see here, I've got a Rolex GMT Master Homage. This particular one is a Debert. Don't know, never heard of it, but it was very, very cheap on eBay, and I just couldn't resist, and I thought, why ever not? I'll go for it. And it has a cheap DG2813 based or style automatic movement, which is based on a Miyota with a GMT function. It works perfectly well. It's pretty accurate. I've tested this and regulated it on the Timegrapher, and I have given it a little bit of tweaking just to try and improve the positional variation slightly, and it works great. The GMT function works great. It can be set individually. It's, you know, this was 30 quid off eBay. You know, who's going to complain at that? You can't even get a decent, a good quality quartz for that. So it's all good. It's even got a quick sort of what do they call it? Click lock, or there's a name for it, isn't there? That type of clasp, and it's a really good, thick, solid milled clasp as well, not a folded metal one. It's spectacular, frankly, for the price of it. It's great. It's essentially a 50 quid, 50 to 100 quid watch from AliExpress, and I just happened to get that for a great price, brand new. So anyway, that's enough of that. So like I say, I love a Homage. As you can see, I've got this. I've got several watches which are homages of other watches, Panerai style watches with Parnis and that kind of thing. And I think they're great. I think they're great fun. They're a great way of getting a watch that's affordable, and it means you can have several watches of a style that you like without having to go silly or having to narrow it down to just one. You can have 5 or 6 instead and still have change. It's great. Now, the original Willard, the 6105-8110, made from 1968, I believe, through the 70s, was an immensely popular watch, and it became very, very famous. You'll notice also I had actually pulled the lever out so that I could present that in a very artistic fashion at 10 past, and I've gone and knocked the hand there, so that's kind of ruined that. Oh well, there you go. But there you go, the whole classic. There's you go. There's the classic 10 past 10 with the seconds hand straight up. So we'll pop that in anyway and let that start ticking away. I'm going to wind this in a moment, pop it on the Timegrapher and see how it performs, and we'll see how it does straight out of the box. So the original one was made from, I believe, 1968 through the 70s to 78, 76, something like that. I'm not a Seiko expert, but I believe the numbers are somewhere around there. It's a very nice watch for what it is. It's ridiculously overpriced now, and it's worth so much money quite simply because it has a link to fame. That fame being, it is the Willard watch named after Willard White, the fictional reclusive billionaire from the James Bond movie Thunderbolt. No, that's the wrong one. No, it's named after Willard White, the British Jamaican baritone operist. No, it's not that one either. No, Captain Willard, that's who it is. It's Martin Sheen who played Captain Willard in the very famous 1976, 78 film Apocalypse Now. For those of you who don't know, Apocalypse Now is a movie rendition of the very, very famous novel by Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, which I highly recommend you read. Very, very good book, a very good story, and that is where Apocalypse Now comes from. Interestingly enough, for those who might be interested, of course. For those who aren't, then not interesting. But anyway, there you go. And Martin Sheen's character, Captain Willard, made that watch very, very famous in much the same way as Colonel Pogue made the 6139 speed timer with the gold sunburst dial. Very famous because he wore one in space, making it the first unofficial automatic chronograph watch in space. Now, that's pretty cool. You've got to admit, that's cool bragging rights. But yeah, unfortunately, as a result of that, it's really, really priced the originals out of the market for most people. And I quite simply could not justify paying the £1,000 plus that the originals command. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous when you look at the movement, you look at the watch, and you look at the wear and tear it will have encountered over the years. The newer ones, of course, are much, much better. They are effectively an homage by Seiko of their own 6105. And they're great. They're lovely looking watches. But again, they're horrendously expensive. There was the initial limited run one with the higher beat movement and the much nicer, higher quality movement. And then there's the Prospex version, which again is £1,000. It's crazy. This, with or without the logo, the Steeldive logo, you can get from Steeldive UK, from the Steeldive UK shop, for £100. I think it's just over £100 it works out at, including shipping. That's incredible. And that, from that particular store, comes on the stainless bracelet with an additional strap, which I believe is a rubber, I don't know if it's a tropical type strap, but it does come with a rubber strap as an additional thing as well. As you can see with this one, this is 200 meters water resistant, unlike the original Willard, which was 150 meters water resistant. And the overall styling of the dial, the indices, the hands, and the very, very unique traffic light, lollipop, whatever you'd call it, style sweep seconds hand. And of course it does use a Seiko movement. It uses a Seiko NH35 hacking movement. And they are a great little movement. They're very cheap, very affordable. They're great for mod watches, for micro brands, and for Homage watches. And they're incredibly accurate for what they are. They're an absolute bargain price, and they're a very well built, mass-produced movement, and I've got no problems whatsoever with them. I did a video servicing one a little while ago. If you look back on my channel, and you can see the movement disassembled and reassembled, and they're very, very similar to Seikos that have gone before, the 7S26 and so on, with a few little changes and a few little additions to include hand winding and such. And the best feature, of course, is the hacking, well, the hand winding and the hacking seconds together, frankly. I think both are much, much needed features, because so many people nowadays are used to hacking, used to be able to set the watch incredibly accurately, and the lack of hand winding is something that's always frustrated me with other Seikos. As much as I have some other Seikos which I think are lovely watches, I really, really like them, I hate the fact that you cannot hand wind them first thing. It bugs me. If it was a watch you're wearing every day, it really doesn't matter, because the automatic winding of these is incredibly efficient with the pawl levers, the magic fingers as they're referred to. But I do like to hand wind a watch, because I rotate them daily. I have a different watch on every day pretty much, so I do like to hand wind a watch. But looking at this again, as I say, you can, looking at the case back, you can see it's really thick, really good, sturdy quality, highly polished case sides with the very sort of unique inward curving shape that you are used to on the 6105. And we have a nice brushed, curved surface on the back, lovely curve to the case, so it fits the wrist incredibly well. A nice coin edge bezel, very, very grippy. And the insert, I like this in the flesh. In the pictures, I was a little unsure, and I was thinking it might be nice to change that to one with a Lume pip, because I do like the look of the Lume pip of the original, but I'm not sure now. I actually quite like that in the flesh. The only thing I don't like, and it's the same as my Blank Pan 50 Fathoms Homage, the Oceanica Tambour, is the bicolour Lume. I don't like that they do that. I would rather they stick to one colour Lume for all of it, but it seems to be a bit of a thing. It seems to be a fashionable thing. We will look at the Lume and see how that performs. See how that looks, and perhaps compare it to some others. I'll maybe compare it to this and to my Helm Komodo, because my Helm Komodo is the Lume monster. It is the Lume to beat all looms, and I like that as a comparison piece. The Lume on this one is rubbish. I can tell you that straight off hand. It's absolute rubbish. I'm hoping this one's going to be a little bit better. I'm not expecting it to be amazing, but we will see. We'll see. At this point here, I am going to give this a wind. And just to show the workings, you turn clockwise to rotate the hands to set the time, half pull to set the date, and you turn that anti-clockwise, as you can see, quick set date, and obviously the hacking function, you pull the crown all the way out and it hacks, which is a nice feature. And then on top of that, of course, you have a screw down crown. I will also be testing the water resistance to see if it does show as watertight, and then we'll have a look at it on the Timegrapher and see how it performs, and if necessary we'll pop the back off and do a little bit of regulating. So gloves off at this point, because you've seen the shiny case and that's all we need to see. I'm just very quickly going to pop that on my wrist. The clasp feels very secure, although it's quite a thin clasp. You've got the fold over bit there. This one is signed Steeldive with the Steeldive logo, which is quite nice. It's very thin folded clasp, generic sort of cheap clasp, but the strap is nice, it's comfortable, it doesn't pinch. A nice positive lock on there with the twin pushers, and that snaps over like so. And I have, as you can see, very skinny wrists, but this sits really, really nicely on my wrist. It feels incredibly comfortable. I would love to compare this to either the original or the reissue, or ideally to both of them. I'm certainly not going to be buying one anyone soon, but if there's anybody out there with an original or a reissue that would be prepared to send them in for a side-by-side review, I would be more than happy to pay for the shipping to do that. So, you know, give me a shout. I'm not expecting a queue of people to jump up and say, hey, me, because, you know, I'm potentially asking somebody to ship a very, very expensive watch there. So, you know, but that would be nice. That would be really nice. And it'd be interesting for me to see how these look side by side, just in terms of the actual build quality, the weight, the heft, the shape, the overall look. We're not looking at the performance, because obviously a 1970s watch is going to have some wear you're not going to expect that to perform to the same sort of standards as a brand new one. And the NH35 and the 4R35 are the same movement, so you know it's not a comparison in terms of which performs better. I'm just talking about a side-by-side visual comparison. Here we move on to the timing settings, and apologies first of all for the low quality video here, but I was filming this on my cell phone and digitally zooming into the screen as well, which was not the best solution, but it does give you the general idea of what we're looking at. And I will be covering in a separate video at some point the proper use of a Timegrapher, because especially with collectors rather than people that work on watches, I often see them used incorrectly or not adequately to get a true reading of the performance. So the first thing we've done there is I've set the lift angle correctly for the watch, fastened the watch onto the microphone stand, and I just restarted that there because as I clipped the bracelet clasp shut, that did affect the reading. So we're taking a good trace over the course of a relatively long period to get a good average reading, and this is in the dial up position. Dial up and dial down should always give very, very close, very similar readings, because this is the best performing area. This is where it's on the tips of the pivots of the balance, and as you can see straight out of the box on a first wind we're getting very, very good clean results. We've got an amplitude that's creeping up to the 270s and an average of -1. In dial down position you'll see we're getting very similar results. Again, the amplitude is creeping up still very slightly. I have seen the NH35 achieve amplitudes above 280 comfortably, towards 290, and it varies watch to watch, but they perform well within the sort of 270 to 290 range anyway. We then move to crown down or 9 high, and you'll note immediately a drop in amplitude, which is common because you're going from running on the pivots to running on the sides in the jewel holes, so there always will be an amplitude loss, but the performance should still remain fairly consistent, and as you can see we're doing quite well there at -3. We then move to pendant right or 6 high. This is as viewed with you wearing the watch, so from the back of the watch as it were, and here you can see a slight positional variation. We're dropping a little bit there and we're reading an average of about -6 to -8, but still not too bad. And then pendant up or 3 high, and a more noticeable positional variation there, but still not horrendously bad for such a cheap and readily available movement, and still tighter than you will find on many serviced vintage pieces with wear. And this of course could always be cleaned up and tightened up slightly yet, and of course this is brand new out of the box on the first wind. And as you can see that's remaining fairly consistent in the -15-ish range. And finally pendant left or 12 high, which is the least common position. Bearing in mind when timing a watch, your cheaper movements will be timed in 3 positions, and that's dial up, pendant down and pendant right, or 9 high and 6 high. And they're your 3 most common positions for a wristwatch to be worn and read. There you can see we've just moved that back to dial up, and if you watch the trace you can see the amplitude will be increasing and the trace will be leveling back out to the 0 -1. And now we move on to the Lume example test. And what I've done here is I've charged up all three of the watches using my UV lamp that I use for curing my resin prints, and that was shone on them for 1 minute, and you can see that this is speeded up footage, and this shows the lume over a period of 10 minutes. Now it might not look very impressive on video, but I need to state that when your eyes see lume, you see them differently to how video sees them, and often on videos the lume shots are shown using a handheld camcorder, a cell phone or something similar, which automatically adjusts itself to the brightness and what have you of the picture. In this image I've used my camera that I use for working at the bench, and it's a fixed aperture, a fixed shutter speed and a fixed ISO, so you'll notice that the actual watches themselves remain in a consistent state of brightness, and the lume accordingly degrades along with that. So it's not exactly as it would appear to your eyes, but it's enough so that you can get an idea of how much one fades versus another. So on the left we've got the Steeldive Willard, in the middle we've got the Oceanica Tambo, which is a blank pan 50 fathoms Homage, and essentially a rebranded Kickstarter watch, and on the right is the Helm Komodo. And you'll note that the one that's most visible coming up to the end of the 10-minute test period is the Helm Komodo, and this is very, very distinctly obvious to the naked eye. And the Willard is a little bit disappointing, unfortunately, but I say a little bit because it's still an incredibly good value watch. So that wraps up the overview and review of the Willard. I've been wearing this now for a month and a half solid, on and off, more on than off, because it's such a fun, comfortable bargain watch to just pick up and throw on in an afternoon or in the morning or whenever. And I've worn it so much that I've actually changed watches twice a day, and to get a few hours of wearing this in, which ordinarily I will wear one watch per day, and with the case of this one, I have actually been wearing this in an evening if I haven't worn it during the day, and sometimes for a full day and well into the next morning as well. The timekeeping has been great, and it is, as the kids say, a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. There might be one or two little bits that you're not overly keen on. If you're a watch snob, you might have the attitude of, oh well, it's not a genuine Willard, but it's also not £1,000 plus. So you just have to, look at it for what it is. It's a beautifully made Homage. It's an absolutely rock solid case. It's a really nice crystal, really nice bezel. The overall look is just right, and it's £80, 80 Great British pounds sterling, which is what, $110, $120, something like that. Not much more, because the exchange rate's a bit rubbish at the moment. Probably 100 euros, 90 euros or something. It's an absolute bargain. I mean, you tell me, the movement alone, to go out and buy an NH35 is going to be £30–35 to buy the movement, and it's a great solid movement. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It's no frills, it's not fancy, but it's a really good movement. And as I say, £80. If you buy it from Steeldive UK shop, it's £105, I think, including shipping, and that comes with an extra strap. The stainless steel bracelet, I've read a few people sort of grumbling about the quality of it. Truly, I cannot see any quality problems with this. If I'm going to grumble about anything, it's that the clasp is a very kind of generic, fairly cheap folded steel clasp, but it does the job, I'm not looking for anything fancy in a clasp personally, because I'm looking at the watch, not the bracelet or the clasp. I like the steel bracelets because I'm not a fan of rubber straps, as I said. But for £105 in the UK, so for a cert you're not going to get import duties, £105 from the Steeldive UK shop. You cannot cannot go wrong. You really can't, especially when your only alternative is £1,000 plus. Unless you really, really desperately want an original Willard or one of the Seiko Prospex reissue Willards, then I have no hesitation in saying save yourself some money and get yourself one of these. £80 delivered with import duty from AliExpress, or £105 from the Steeldive UK shop. You really can't go wrong. Where else on earth can you get such a lot of watch for so little money? So if you like it, if you like the look, and if you've been hesitant and curious, have no worries whatsoever. Just dive in and order yourself one. Go and get one right now. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. We'll see you in the next video.